As my heir, William now assumes the Scottish titles which have meant so much to me. He succeeds me as Duke of Cornwall.
There was a handwritten note. Not a formal palace communication on embossed letterhead, not a press release coordinated through the Royal Communications Office, not a strategically timed announcement designed to generate a specific media cycle. A handwritten note delivered personally, inviting a Canadian actor to attend the coronation of the next King of England. That note is the most important royal document most people have never heard of, not because of what it says, but because of what it reveals about the man who wrote it and the monarchy he is in the process of quietly, methodically, and irreversibly building. The invitation nobody expected. St. George's Hall at Windsor Castle has hosted coronation banquets and state visits. Its walls have absorbed the conversations of sovereigns and foreign leaders, the negotiations and the ceremonies that define the rhythm of Britain's relationship with the world. It is not the kind of place where things happen casually. And yet, in a back room of that hall, during the filming of a candid travel documentary, Prince William handed Eugene Levy a personal invitation to his upcoming coronation and accompanied it with a short handwritten note hinting at a small but meaningful role for the actor during the service itself. Levy, characteristically understated in public, described the moment in an off-camera aside as the kind of day you never dream of. The palace did not announce it. It surfaced because of that single unscripted remark, which is precisely the point. This was not a leak. It was not a managed revelation designed to generate sympathetic coverage. It was a glimpse of something real, and what it revealed was more significant than any formal announcement could have been. A future king inviting a Hollywood-born outsider with Commonwealth roots and zero political baggage into Britain's most sacred ceremony is not a casual gesture. It is a declaration of intent. It tells you everything about the monarchy William is building and nothing about the one the world has known for the past 70 years. During the Windsor filming session, with Levy nursing a Guinness and William working through a sweet cider, the Prince of Wales mapped out 3 priorities he intends to pursue once crowned. He spoke of re-evaluating royal power, of asking whether every tradition is still fit for purpose, and adjusting those that are not, respectfully but decisively. He described 2024 as the hardest year of his life. And 6 months before the Levy meeting surfaced, King Charles issued a directive empowering Catherine to stand in for him at high-level diplomatic events. This was a role previously held exclusively by the Queen Consort. The transfer was not announced with fanfare. It was simply implemented, and the effects became visible through behavior rather than proclamation. Catherine began appearing at state banquets and private diplomatic dinners with a frequency and a function that went beyond decorative presence. Her office began sending briefings to foreign dignitaries before their arrival. UK ambassadors in several key postings began consulting her directly on matters of soft diplomacy. One senior diplomat, speaking without attribution, described the shift plainly. She is not just attending events, she is setting their tone and direction. The implications for Camilla were immediate and unmistakable. The Queen Consort had spent years building her position within the institution, navigating decades of public hostility with remarkable patience and eventual success. To find that position being quietly transferred to her daughter-in-law, without confrontation and without ceremony, represented a form of sidelining that was all the more effective for being invisible. Her retreats to Raymell House grew longer. Her absences from forward-facing palace initiatives became more frequent, and those who watched the monarchy's internal dynamics closely began noting the gap between her official title and her actual influence, with the particular attention that palace observers applied to things that nobody is saying out loud. Then came the appointment that made the shift impossible to ignore. Buckingham Palace confirmed that Michael Middleton, Catherine's father, had been named as a senior advisor for youth and community engagement. The response inside certain parts of the palace was described as stunned. not because Michael Middleton is unsuitable for the role, but because Camilla had reportedly lobbied for her son Tom Parker Bowles to receive a comparable appointment. That proposal was rejected by King Charles. The king did not split the difference or find a compromise that accommodated both families. He chose the Middletons. The signal that's sent through the palace hierarchy was received clearly by everyone capable of reading it. If Camilla's family represents legacy and image, one aide said, the Middletons represent functionality and future. Charles had made his preference between those two categories explicit, and he had done it in the most unambiguous way, the year that built a different man. William described 2024 as the hardest year of his life to a Canadian actor on a travel show. The understatement of that framing is, on reflection, almost breathtaking. Catherine's cancer diagnosis arrived in early spring. The palace released a carefully prepared video message weeks after the fact. But for William, the ordeal had begun long before the public knew anything. Friends close to the couple say he withdrew from all non-essential travel for nearly 8 weeks, attending only the duties that could not be delegated and often leaving those early. He refused to leave Catherine's side during her early treatment periods. There are accounts of him sleeping in hospital guest chairs. One aide who was present during those weeks used language that has rarely been applied to a senior royal before. He stopped being a prince during that time. He became a husband first and a father second. Everything else came last. The children had to be told. George, Charlotte, and Louis, each at different developmental stages, each with a different capacity to absorb what was happening to their mother. William insisted on telling them himself. Those close to him describe it as the moment that changed something fundamental in how he understood what he was being asked to become. Not a future king preparing his children for royal life, but a father sitting in front of 3 small people who needed him to be honest with them about something terrifying. At the same time, King Charles was navigating his own cancer diagnosis. The specific details remained private, but the effect on his capacity was visible and the implications were constitutional. William found himself thinking in 3 registers simultaneously: his father's declining health, his wife's treatment, and his children's stability. The phrase he used with Levy, parallel monarch, was not his own coinage, but it captured something real. He was attending foreign briefings. He was hosting diplomatic dinners. He was managing day-to-day decisions that had previously. The sharpest moment of the year came in May. William was preparing to cancel his attendance at a global Earthshot summit because of a sudden complication in Catherine's treatment. Palace courtiers advised him to delegate the appearance to the Queen Consort. According to a source present for the exchange, William's response was brief and unambiguous. This is not her role anymore. If that remark is accurate, it marks the precise moment when the polite fiction of a comfortable duality between William and Camilla ended. Not with a confrontation, not with a public statement, with 4 words spoken in a private room that told everyone present exactly where the lines had been redrawn. The Commonwealth that needs to be won again. Australia's Prime Minister Anthony Albanese is, on the public record, a Republican. He does not believe Australia should maintain the British monarch as its head of state. He has said so consistently throughout his political career. And yet he extended a personal invitation to Prince William, referred to him as the heir to Australia, and described the proposed tour as an opportunity for the royal family to earn a new kind of relationship with the country. That framing, to earn rather than to assume, is the most important thing Albanese said, and it is the framing William appears to have accepted completely. The planned Australia visit was not conceived as a traditional royal tour. It is being designed as something closer to diplomatic fieldwork, meetings with Indigenous leaders, engagement with climate scientists, conversations with veterans organizations and youth advocates. The specific choice of issues is not accidental. These are the areas where the monarchy has the most work to do, with a population that includes a substantial and growing block of people who see the crown as a relic rather than a relevant institution. "We cannot force belonging," William reportedly told a Commonwealth official during the planning stages, "but we can inspire it." That sentence contains the entire architecture of his foreign policy philosophy. The old monarchy operated on the assumption that the Commonwealth's loyalty was a given, a product of history and shared institutions that would sustain itself without active maintenance. The new one that William is building operates on the opposite premise. Loyalty is earned continuously, or it is lost, and it is earned not through ceremony but through the possible inclusion of Princess Charlotte on the Australia tour adds a layer of dynastic storytelling to the visit's diplomatic purpose. Charlotte traveling as part of the family presence would mark a deliberate departure from the model of Queen Elizabeth's early tours, which famously left young Charles and Anne behind in Britain. It would signal that the Wales family operates as a unit in public life in the same way they appear to in private. It would also place Charlotte before an international audience at a moment carefully chosen to maximize the positive framing of her public introduction. For a 10-year-old who palace insiders describe as possessing an instinctive grasp of public presence, the timing is not incidental. It is engineered. The resistance and its methods. Power being redistributed generates friction. This is not a metaphor or an abstraction. It is a mechanical reality of institutional life, and the House of Windsor in 2024 and 2025 has been no exception to it. The resistance that formed around Camilla's camp and the residual network of Andrew supporters is not a dramatic conspiracy. It is the predictable response of people who once occupied positions of influence and are watching those positions be absorbed by a different configuration. Their methods are the methods available to them: narrative, protocol, and the strategic deployment of ambiguity. A series of opinion pieces and anonymous palace briefings appeared in sympathetic publications, raising the same set of questions in slightly different formulations. Was the monarchy being turned into a family business? Was image replacing duty? Was the pace of change disrespecting the continuity that the institution depends on? The tone was carefully calibrated, not scandalous enough to generate a confrontation, persistent enough to erode confidence. Appointments that might have expanded Camilla's network were stalled in advisory committees through procedural objections. Conflict of interest language, public sensitivity concerns, the routine, bureaucratic vocabulary of delay deployed as a political instrument. Tom Parker Bowles's name disappeared entirely from discussions about advisory roles, not through any dramatic rejection, but through the slow suffocation of bureaucratic inaction. Andrew reappeared at family gatherings, unaccompanied by William, in a pattern that analysts read as an attempt to normalize his presence within palace social circles. His network of old guard courtiers, sympathetic journalists, and aristocratic contacts remained quietly active, sending the signal that the traditional power structures had not entirely dissolved. The most consequential tactic was the push for ambiguity around regency planning. By advocating for caution and patience on constitutional succession questions, Camilla's allies effectively bought time. "We must not rush constitutional changes," one internal brief argued. Each week of unresolved succession architecture was a week during which William's consolidation could be questioned, challenged, or slowed. None of this produced a moment of open confrontation. That was not the point. The point was attrition. Initiatives delayed, advisors discouraged, momentum interrupted. A palace that runs on confidence can be disrupted not by scandal, but by the steady erosion of certainty. The response that refused to escalate. William and Catherine's response to the resistance they encountered reveals something important about how they intend to govern as well as how they have managed the transition. They chose institution over confrontation at every decision point. Guardian committees were established to create transparent criteria for royal advisor appointments. This was not framed as a reaction to Camilla's lobbying or a defense against backroom placement. It was presented as a governance improvement, a sensible reform that happened to make future political manipulation considerably harder. The procedural change achieved what a direct confrontation would not have. It closed the door without naming anyone who had been trying to use it. Courtiers with loyalties that ran counter to the Wales household were not publicly dismissed or humiliated. They were offered graceful retirements, alternative postings, quiet transitions that preserved dignity while removing influence. It is a technique with a long history inside the palace, and it works precisely because it denies its targets the sympathy that comes with visible persecution. The communication strategy was equally disciplined. More earthshot announcements, more hospital visits, more discreet diplomacy. The logic was straightforward: let performance drown out whisper campaigns. A monarchy that is visibly and measurably delivering on its stated priorities does not require its supporters to argue against critics. The record argues for itself. One former courtier described the approach with characteristic palace understatement as winning by being boring. The phrase is deliberately self-deprecating, but the reality it describes is strategically sophisticated. Every op-ed raising questions about the Wales household's motivations was answered not by a rebuttal, but by another visit, another initiative, another data point demonstrating that the institution was working. When Camilla's camp attempted its final significant gambit, pushing for a formal roundtable on succession protocols that might generate procedural safeguards limiting William's autonomy, the window had already closed. Catherine's recovery was advancing. William's international engagements were generating positive coverage. The key establishment figures whose support the gambit required made a political calculation. The cost of freezing momentum now exceeded the cost of permitting orderly change. The moment passed without drama, and with it went the most credible opportunity the resistance had to slow the transition. The ceremony being planned in silence. There is no official announcement, no press release, no countdown. And yet, inside the palaces of Britain and across the diplomatic networks of the Commonwealth, the coronation of Prince William is being planned with the meticulous attention to detail that such an event demands, because everyone involved understands that it is no longer hypothetical. Catherine is expected to stand not merely as queen consort, but as something the role has not previously encompassed: the moral center of the new monarchy's public identity. Her cancer journey, the visibility William allowed into their family's experience of it, and the public response to both have created a form of legitimacy for her that no title can fully confer, but that her presence at the ceremony will embody. Charlotte is expected to appear beside her, not as an heir, not as a sovereign in waiting, but as the living visual argument that the crown's future is layered, that it belongs not just to one person, but to a generation, and that the generation being prepared to carry it has been raised differently from every generation that preceded it. Camilla's role in the proceedings is being described by palace insiders in the language of gentle absence. Her retreat from planning meetings has not been mandated. It has been, in the delicate vocabulary of royal management, recommended. Andrew's access to anything approaching a public coronation role has been ruled out by multiple senior advisors on the grounds that his presence would damage the ceremony's international credibility, and the king has accepted that assessment. Their fading from the picture is not marked by scandal, it is marked by irrelevance. And in many ways, that is the more complete form of removal. What the numbers know. The polling data that now surrounds William and Catherine is not merely favorable. It represents something structurally significant about where public sentiment on the monarchy has settled. 78% of British respondents in recent polling say William is ready to be king now. 69% describe Catherine as the most admired royal figure since Diana. 61% say they would prefer William to be crowned sooner rather than later, citing Charles's health and the need for generational clarity. The most striking number is in the demographic that has historically been most skeptical of the institution. Support among younger voters has risen significantly, specifically during the period following William's emotional transparency about Catherine's illness and his consistent climate and sustainability. This is what William achieved in 2024 by not hiding, by allowing the public to see that he was frightened, by letting it become visible that he sat by his wife's bedside and slept in hospital chairs and got up the next morning to chair a briefing with 12 global leaders, by saying to a Canadian television presenter with no apparent strategy and complete apparent honesty that 2024 was the hardest year of his life. He did not perform strength. He demonstrated it by not pretending he didn't need it. That is the essence of what the next monarchy will be built on. Not the divine right of kings, not the unbroken continuity of a bloodline that stretches back 1,000 years. The demonstrated ability of specific human beings to carry enormous weight without pretending it isn't heavy. William did not rush toward power. He grew into it slowly enough that the growing was visible. He did not take it from anyone. He waited, worked, and outlasted. And through that process, he transformed the question the public is asking about the crown, from whether it deserves to exist to whether it can continue to be this honest. The coronation will come. The season is unknown, the date is provisional, the details are still being shaped, but the direction is not in question. The crown has been circling William's head for years in the understanding of the public, in the calculations of foreign governments, in the quiet, internal reorganization of the palace's institutional machinery. When the ceremony finally arrives, it will not mark the beginning of something entirely new. It will formalize something that has already happened, the transfer of a monarchy's center of gravity from one generation to the next, conducted not through drama but through the patient, unglamorous daily accumulation of trust. The crown is not inherited in name only. It must be carried. And the evidence of the last several years suggests the man